Hello, everyone, and welcome to SBIFF Film Talk. Tonight's film, we're going to be focusing on Vera Cruz. Here's a clip of the film.
I think it's just incredible the way that Jeff infuses so much creativity into his buildings, architecturally, in addition to all these other ways, painting, sculpture, ironwork. It's just a really, really inspiring model of what it is to be an architect.
I think it's radically brave and amazing.
It's mostly pretty much positive, but one person was like, I need a permit to build a 10-foot shed on my property, and Shelton gets to put up these hobbit houses all over town.
Sometimes I feel like the criticism for Jeff comes mostly from architects, and they criticize because they think that he gets special treatment to do these things, but in fact I don't think that's true. I think he brings an idea to the table that's exceptional, and it's so much about the public, it's so much about the people, and not so much about the architect.
And now I'd like to welcome the director of the film, Jenkins, and also the subject matter of the film and architect, Jeff Shelton.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks for being here. So I would like to actually start with Jeff on this one. I was wondering, how did this house become about, and when did you decide that this was a great idea to put these paintings on this house?
My client came in. I designed his house, and he walked in very quietly with he's always quiet. He just said, "Jeff, I bought a lot." Gave me the address. He said, "What can I do on that lot, Jeff? I'd like to do another project." And I said, "Give me come back tomorrow. I'll see what I can do." So I went to the city, check out the technical stuff, and did a painting of just like that. That night, did a little watercolor of of this building with paintings all over it. So it was that simple. I'll get to why I did that. But he came in the next day, saw a little watercolor of basically this house with paintings all over it. And I said, "Here's what I want to do, Jason. We're going to put paintings all over this building." And he just said, "Let's do it." That's how it started.
Nice. And then now I want to know, Chris, how did you get involved with filming this project?
Well, I'd have to say, the first part was becoming friends with Jeff, and Jeff eventually invited me to come film it. But I'd have to go a little bit further back and say that had it not been for Jeff and his family, we wouldn't still be in Santa Barbara. They were very generous to us and very cool. And I wasn't all that impressed with Santa Barbara. We came down from the Bay Area, my wife and I, and we loved Santa Barbara to a certain extent, but the Bay Area is very creative, and I don't think we were finding it for the first year or two. And then we met Jeff and the crew of people that he hangs with, and suddenly we like Santa Barbara, to be honest, and things changed. So we're still here 10 years later. So yeah, so Jeff at one point mentioned the house that he was working on. I'd been looking at all the architecture that he'd been doing and just pretty flabbergasted by what he could accomplish. And this was so fun. I had my undergrad degree in oil painting, and I hadn't touched a paintbrush for years. And so I thought, this is really interesting to see. So he invited me in, and we started capturing it as it went forward.
And how long did you spend filming this project? Because I know it took longer probably than you were out there filming.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I was trying to think today, like, how long were we working on that? When it came down to it, the building was up, right? And then when the paintings went onto the building, he wanted to compress that amount of time, get it going quickly and do it fairly efficiently. And so that's what the film shows. It's a community effort, everybody working together to make it happen pretty quickly when the paintings went up. So that was more of the intense time of capturing it. And I wanted to put kind of a mention of Corey Cullington. He was another person who was helping shoot this. So Corey, if you're out there, thanks for all the help on this project. There's a small crew doing the whole thing. So yeah, so it didn't take too long. You know, I was capturing it over 2 years total, but for the most part, the main stuff happened within a few weeks.
And I noticed you used time-lapse photography in some of the shots. Can you talk a little bit about having to set up those cameras and leave them out all day long to capture all that?
Well, it was a bit complicated, right? If you're going to take a camera and you're going to leave it out. I have a little bit of gear that allows me to do some time lapses that start when the sun rises and turn off the camera when the sun goes down. And so some of the people who are involved, Matt Metcalf, an incredible guy who works with Dan Upton Construction, he built some poles. And then Jeff's brother, David, built some metal boxes to put the cameras inside. And then we, so they wouldn't be stolen basically, right? But they were high up and they basically put these cameras right where we wanted them. Also mounted some to some trees that were in front. And then, yeah, it was great. It was fun. I didn't just do it at that building, but other buildings as well. And so, yeah, it's kind of time lapses. You have to think of them ahead of time, and you have to really think it through. How are you going to do this? But so we had these basically little bird boxes up there that had cameras inside that had locks on the back, so they wouldn't be stolen. But they were working on their own independently, and it's something that's kind of cool. A little circuit board you can put on the back of even cameras like GoPros, and allow them to the battery to last up to 4 or 5 days when it usually lasts 4 hours, right?
And Jeff, how was it for you to be on camera and working around a situation like this, having somebody follow you and capture your work?
Well, I don't like being on camera, so I would rather just be at the drawing table drawing, and or a job site getting buildings built. So pieces at the drawing table with a blank piece of white paper in front of me. But, you know, I know Chris, he was respectful and put up with me, and because I tried to ignore him so I could just get to work. And, you know, so it wasn't a show. I was working. He had to hang on for the ride. I'm sure he's got a ton of footage that he had to toss in the trash. But, you know, architecture is a slow endeavor, right? It takes years to get buildings built. It's not like doing a painting, or maybe paintings. My paintings don't take very long, but so it's a very slow process. But he was able to pull out enough the information that was needed for this documentary.
And could we talk a little bit about the paintings themselves? How many exactly are on this, on the house? And also, can we talk a little bit about the artists that were involved? I know you did a few paintings, and I even think Chris did a few paintings for this. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I should backtrack. In that, when I was growing up, there was a house over right below City College on Rancheria, I think, Street. Sanford Darling's house. He was a man who, the story goes, his wife had died, so he started painting his house. He started painting little scenes of every place he'd been in the world, and it looks like he spent a lot of time in Japan, and because there were Mount Fuji's all over this building. But he ended up painting everything: the refrigerator, the roof tiles. So as a family, I had 3 older brothers. We would go down there, and it was a shrine to me. I was the youngest, so I believed whatever they believed, and this was a shrine. So we ended up, that was like the pinnacle of architecture growing up. So back to Sanford Darling painting places he'd been. That's what I told my client when he said, "What are we painting?" I said, "We're going to get paintings of places people have been, or something from the place they're from, something that had a story behind it, not just go ahead and paint something." So that was my instructions to everybody, was to paint something you'd seen, some great place you'd been, something from that place. You know, I said no dolphins, no unicorns, no rainbows, something like that. But the great thing about this was I never called everyone up and begged for paintings. Somehow the story got out that I needed paintings, and people appeared. And they appeared enthusiastically. People who paint for a living, who like Richard Wilkie, who painted 88 or more paintings. I ended up painting 70 something because I had to fill in gaps, and I was trying to get this thing going. But there's 400 and some paintings on there now. I don't have an exact count, but let's say right about 400. A lot more to go. And everywhere from I think a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old did some paintings, all the way to painters, great plein air painters in town, and people who just were scared to paint. The last time they painted was in 2nd grade or something. So it's fantastic if you stop and look with that in mind now. Don't think it's just people showing off or having to get something out. A lot of people would call me up and struggle with, I'm scared to do this. And no, just paint it. Be bold and paint it. It's outside. So the stories I've gotten from each one of those paintings, someday I want to write down with the painting. I've got them all. I'd like to put them all together. But Chris did a couple, and like he said, he pulled his brush out for a few years, and it's opened up some doors. And back to what Chris was saying, that one main day, I think it was November 1st, somewhere around there, 2013, is when we put all the paintings up on the facade. And no one knew what it was going to look like. I didn't, nobody did. We just had office full of paintings and with numbers on it. So I was as surprised and delighted as anybody to see that finally take place.
That's great. And Chris, you want to talk about the 3 paintings you did and where they ended up getting placed?
Well, I ended up only doing 2, and it was great that Jeff, he kind of prodded me along to get a couple of paintings myself. It was great. I hadn't painted for 20 years, to be honest. And I did a piece of a scene that I had witnessed in South Sudan that was so just kind of impactful to me. A tribe called the Toposa tribe that I had been with and filming, and they were just so full of love. They're incredible people, but really quite different, because their wicker homes were up on stilts to keep away from the hyenas primarily. And then I did another piece about a cassowary bird that I had an encounter with in northern Australia. And I didn't know it at the time, but I had seen one of these birds and I'd run chasing after it, and it was a mama with 2 babies. And it turns out that they're considered one of the few birds that can kill you. I didn't know that at the time. They say if you encounter them, you should try to get plywood between you and the bird, because they can disembowel you really quickly with their claws. And anyway, I didn't have any kind of violent encounter with it. I just had a peaceful, beautiful encounter with it, and ended up painting that one. And it was so fun to break out the paintbrush again. I'm one of those people who, when I dropped the paintbrush, I picked up the camera, and I'd been working with a camera for 20 years. So when Jeff said, no, you paint something, I couldn't say no.
That's wonderful. And Jeff, question about the house itself, the color of the house, this lime green, purple, and blue. Most of your buildings are a natural color, and I was just wondering about the choice of using that vibrant of a color for this project.
Well, funny you talk about the color, because we're talking about the color of the building. That's, it's the paintings really is what the building is. But the remarkable thing about the building is, first of all, it's a commercial zone. These houses that were down zoned or up zoned to commercial. So that's why I wanted to do something different there. It wasn't in the El Pueblo Viejo, so no Spanish thing, whatever that is. And it was a whole different idea of architecture there. So that's one reason I would jump to this type of a building and not on the Upper East Side. I'd get thrown out from all the neighbors. But Well, I don't think we should forget that I took a model into the review board and they approved it with paintings all over it. So hats off to the review board, to the city for seeing what I saw and letting that happen, right? There were a few people, few women on that board who basically turned the corner on this thing and said, let Jeff do what he wants to do. Let him pick the colors. So I did, and they let me be the judge on that one. Just don't be obscene or too political, they said. So I stuck by that. And but the green, it's funny about the green is we painted that building green, and the next day I got a call from the city that we didn't approve that color. And Jaime Limon called me, Jeff, get over here. And I came over there and I showed him the color they approved. It was exactly that green. But maybe I use that lime green too a lot in other buildings. But it would be mostly covered up, I figured.
Well, it really brings out the colors of all the paintings and it frames it perfectly. So I think you made the right choice with that. It's definitely eye-opening when you turn that corner. You definitely want to take a look at that house. So I think it was a smart move. Chris, I want to talk about another art that's involved in the film, and that is the soundtrack. You open this film with very much like Rasta surf music, and then there's a part in the film when you do the montage that you put it to a piano. Can you talk a little bit about the music?
I can. It's interesting enough. I teach my students a lot about this, but I didn't have anybody compose. I was kind of working with people who could compose, but I went ahead and I looked for music out there that was relatively either affordable or royalty-free kind of music. And I found just music that I felt fit was appropriate. And especially towards the end, some of the music that, I don't know if people know it, but Jeff spent some time in Ireland, and I think the song was called Batty McFadden or something like that. And when I heard it, it just fit. It fit the energy and it fit the piece. And so in that sense, I needed to kind of make it fit, make the images fit to the music, because once it's composed, that's what you've got to do. But so that was kind of my approach to the soundtrack.
I also wanted to talk a little bit about an interesting thing that you do is you don't really introduce the character with a title or their name. Can you talk a little bit about the choice of not putting their name and like who they are? Yeah.
Well, you can imagine with this kind of piece, you know, Jeff, I think that you'll get to know who he is throughout the film, and he's the main character. There are others that are incredible characters: Richard Wilkie, Dan Upton, Andy Johnson, Matt Metcalf, some amazing people in Santa Barbara. I think titles quite often distract. They do. They distract my eye when I'm watching something, and if I'm paying close attention, quite often I don't necessarily need to know who they are, what their title is. I need to know what they're feeling, what they're saying at that moment, and that's the way I kind of stay with the film. I could have easily put titles on a lot of people, but I think it would have been just too distracting. I kind of want people to ride the wave in a sense, and hear from the people and not worry about what status they are, or what job they have, or who they are, what title they have. In the United States, I feel like people think about that a little bit too much. Like, what do you do is always that question, as opposed to how do you feel? What are you doing today? And that's what matters most, I think. So titles, they could have been appropriate in this piece, but I had them in for a while and I pulled them out because I was like, kind of slows down the pace.
And can you also talk a little bit about your editing process for a short documentary? And because I've seen other films of yours and that have been much longer, can you talk a little bit about the heartbreak of having to cut certain things and add certain things to make this story flow?
Yeah, I mean, this is why I do documentary, to be honest, is because all of those outtakes are worth the experience. Every last one of them. That's why we go out and we do what we do, because we want to experience the whole thing, and we want to give back a story that can give you the gist of what it was about. But obviously with this piece and with any other films, there's a lot more that goes into it, and that experience of being on the ground with people is what it's all about. And we talk about in film school killing our orphans. those pieces that of the film that just you love, but they don't fit into your piece. And that's part of it. You have to kind of make those hard choices and say, you know, I love that, but it doesn't have a place in this film. It might have a place in like the DVD extras or something like that, but we don't even have DVDs anymore. So anyway, I feel like that's it. Like, I just want to, in these kind of situations, be with these people, get to understand them, get to know them, film everything I need to, keep capturing, keep rolling, get to know it really well, get to know that footage, and then work. I try to work intuitively a lot, you know, different things, like, for example, in the piece when Jeff out of the blue mentions that, oh, he's talking to Richard, he says, you know, you can throw a Frisbee from your place to his. And meanwhile, I have all this cool footage of Jeff throwing a Frisbee. The guy can throw a Frisbee, by the way. People don't know. And so, you know, boom, that's a segue into an interesting new piece. And I really encourage, you know, my students, I teach out at UCSB, and I teach a lot of those students to try to tap into that aspect of intuitive filmmaking, which is, you've got to be listening a lot, listening all the time, and kind of looking for those moments that couldn't happen really in a script. You know, in a documentary, this is what happens. Things happen, and you just, if you're there and you're rolling, you capture it. And that's the hard part, is like being there, being quiet, being rolling, watching what was happening and capturing it as it happens. That's what I love. So, you know, it's difficult. Editing is, it's like, can't be anything quite like architecture, because, you know, he does things that will last a long, long time. Mine might burn up in the in the future, no problem. But these buildings are there for a long time. And so anyway, my editing it's just a process. You know, it's you cut out what isn't worth putting in. You know.
I appreciate your edit with the cat after the cat story was told, and having the cat dip off screen. That was pretty funny. So I do appreciate that, because that was a pretty funny moment that you put in there. Jeff, what was it like for you to eventually see the final footage of this film and hear these friends of yours and artists that participate talk about you as a person?
Well, first of all, architecture is exactly the same as editing. What you're doing there with the film, with the movie, with poetry, with whatever you're doing, we first get rid of the stuff that doesn't work, even though it's your favorite thing. So, yes, a lot gets left on the floor. So, and it's perfect for this building, because the building was like this. I didn't know it was going to come. We just had to put it all up fast and go with it. So. To hear, I love CJ's movie. I mean, to capture 2 years and 15 minutes, the soul of it. That was what he needed to do, and he did it. To hear people talk about me in a good way. Of course, that's nice. It's uncomfortable, and we just work hard and try to let everyone be included. So I appreciate everybody who joined in and was part of the building.
And I want to talk a little bit about, you have an art walk here in Santa Barbara, for those who don't know. Can you talk a little bit about the walk, where people can walk around and check out all of your different building locations?
Yeah, well, it certainly didn't start at that. What happened was I just kept getting work within 4 blocks of my office. And then pretty soon I was just saying, buy a lot within 4 blocks of my office. I don't have to walk very far. And so that was fortunate. I'm so grateful for that, to have a kind of almost a little neighborhood to work in. So it turned into a walk, because people would come and say, I want to see this building or that building. And instead of handing them some addresses, I did a little postcard, and then I started giving tours. And now we're doing actually a book about those 8 buildings. So everything just happens. I work hard, and pretty soon I've got 8 buildings within 4 or 5 blocks of each other. So I made a walk out of it and trying to have fun with it and trying to run with that. In that people keep coming, from China or Germany or South Africa. They show up at my office wanting It was something to do, I guess. Walk around.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight, and I really appreciate the film, and I appreciate both of your time, and I hope we get to meet each other in person, Jeff, and I hope to see you again real soon, Chris.
Thanks so much, Mickey. And thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.